Hi, my name is Nathan. You're watching Nice at Dice, and today I'm talking about a game called Unlock the Escape Game, specifically the Star Wars edition. If you're not familiar with the Unlock series, basically this is a series of games that try to sort of emulate the experience of an escape room. This game uses a deck of cards and an assistant app in order to do that. This particular edition of the game has 3 scenarios that are all Star Wars themed. I'm a big fan of Star Wars, and I've enjoyed escape room experiences in person, so I was curious to see how this game would capture the experience of an escape room and capture that Star Wars theme. Now, there are 3 scenarios in this game, plus a really brief tutorial scenario. I don't want to spoil the 3 main scenarios, and that's definitely something you could do with a review of this game because each of the scenarios basically revolves around solving various puzzles. So I don't want to give away the solutions to any of those puzzles. So I am going to show you briefly how the game works just using the tutorial. So spoiler alert if you're worried about the tutorial being spoiled, but I'm not going to show you all the solutions to the tutorial. And again, the tutorial is really just this brief little introductory thing to kind of get you up to speed on how the game works. So I'm going to go over that a little bit, and then we're going to come back here, and I'm going to give you my thoughts on it. So let's go ahead and get the app going here. As you can see, when you open up the app, you have 4 different selections. You have the tutorial and then the 3 different full scenarios. So we're going to go right into the tutorial there. And as you can see, you have a button to start. You have a little 10-minute timer that starts counting down. And you have a few other things on here that I'll show you as we go through. So you also have the deck of cards. There's going to be 1 card that outlines the scenario on here, just as far as the theming of it, the story, what's going on. Then it'll tell you to flip over, and here you have a little map of the holding cell that you're supposed to be in, and you've got some different numbers on here. The numbers on here correspond to the numbers on the backs of some of these cards in the deck, and so as soon as you see any of these numbers shown on a card like this, you're going to go find them and here and flip them over. So we're going to do that now. We've got a few cards here, 5 of them in total, and there we go. So the first thing that you want to know is that there are going to be cards that have a red border at the top with this little like red puzzle piece symbol, and then you're going to have cards with a blue border at the top with a blue puzzle piece symbol. So you can see those 2 symbols could go together. That means these 2 cards could be used together. So you're going to look at the numbers of these 2 cards, 42 and 11, and add those up for 53. And that's how we test to see if this code cylinder will do anything with this data screen. So again, 53, we're going to look through here. You're going to look at just the backs of the cards and see if there's a 53. There is no 53. So that means these 2 items together do nothing. But maybe we'll try the code cylinder with this locked crate, because again, it's a red and a blue. They go together. So 46, do we have a 46 in here? Yep, sure enough, we have a 46. So we'll find the 46, we'll flip it open. We'll see now that the crate has been opened. Up here, it's going to tell us to get rid of cards 11 and 35. That's these 2, so we can get rid of them. We know we've already used them for the purpose that they're intended for. We can just get rid of those. And now we have the crate that's open. Once you open the crate, it's going to tell you to look at the crate for anything useful. There's a couple of useful things on this picture. One of them is this little number inside of here, which is kind of a very odd looking 16. And so we're going to look through this deck to see if there's a 16. If there is, which there is, then we can flip that card over and add it to our stash. So there's a length of wire in the crate, so maybe we'll use that for something at some point. Another thing that we're going to be looking at in this game is you're going to have cards with a green border and this symbol. This is called a machine, and you use the machines by using the app. So here's that same symbol right here. You can tap on that symbol. You put in the number of the machine, 69 in this case. So we'll put in 69, hit OK. It says to use this machine, you must press the buttons matching the correct pins and press OK. All right, so it's going to give us a thing here that we have to deal with, pushing some different things. hit OK. Oh, no, that didn't work. We lost a minute. Okay. So you're going to have to solve that puzzle on your own, but basically stuff like that. Also, we're going to have cards like this with a yellow border and this little lock symbol. So this has a number 21. We're going to go into here, code. We don't have to put in the 21. It automatically knows basically what code you're looking for. And so this is always going to be a 4-digit code. So in our exploration of these different things, we're going to be looking for a 4-digit code. Once we find the 4-digit code, we can enter it in here. Oh, let's just go for 1, 2, 3, 4 and hit OK. That wasn't the correct code. We lost another minute, but that's basically it. You're looking for the correct code so you can progress. That's essentially what you're doing here. You're, looking for cards you can combine to get new cards. You're looking for, things that you can enter in on these machines in order to get some progress. And ultimately, you're looking for 4-digit codes that you can put in for the yellow cards in order to progress through the game. That's basically an overview of how the game works. We'll go back up top and I'll give you my thoughts on it. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of an idea of how the game works. As you can see, it's a lot of just manipulating those cards, combining, what if I use this item with this item? What does that get me? Doing those little machines in the app, and then finding those codes and entering them in the app in order to progress. The tutorial gives you 10 minutes to complete the tutorial. The main scenarios give you 60 minutes, which is kind of standard fare for these escape room type activities. So, first of all, this is a Star Wars escape room type experience. So I want to talk about that because I am a big Star Wars fan. And so how does this do as a Star Wars escape game? Well, it does pretty well. I liked the scenarios. I thought they did a pretty good job implementing the theme of Star Wars into it. You have different things where you're interacting with droids and ships, and there's one where you're on an Imperial Star Destroyer, and so you're dealing with stormtroopers and Imperial officers and that kind of thing. There's one scenario where you're dealing with different aliens, and so alien languages come into it, although it's not like authentically Star Wars. You don't have to translate Huttese or anything like that. But I thought they did a pretty good job of implementing the Star Wars theme. There was only one issue that I had coming into it where, as a fan of Star Wars, I was a little thrown off by the game because there's, as you can see on the cover here, you have this ship here. If you're a big Star Wars fan, you might know that this is the Outrider, or a ship of that class. And so I was familiar with that. And there's this one puzzle, and without spoiling too much here, there's a puzzle where they have a picture of that ship, and they're talking about directions on the ship as far as like the front of the ship, the side of the ship, the back of the ship, that kind of thing. And for some reason, they seem to think that that this here is the front of the ship, when as a fan, you probably know that this is the front of the ship. And so just their seeming confusion about that made that puzzle a little bit confusing for me, what they were trying to get me to do or trying to get me to solve. It kind of threw me off. But other than that, that's the one little niggly thing about the implementation of the theme. Everything else was pretty much spot on as far as the theme goes. So what about the game itself? I like the general system of the game. I think it's cool that you have those cards and the way you can sort of combine those cards in different ways to try and make progress. The green cards, which let you interact with the app more, that's really interesting. Although I will say that's one of the things that probably messed me up the most in this game, as far as just having me, like stumped as to what to do or how to make progress. And I'll give you 2 examples, and I'll try to make this vague so that I don't really spoil anything, but still kind of give you an idea of what the issue is. So the first one that kind of had us stumped was, there was a situation where we're using one of these green cards, we're going into the app, and the app basically gives us a static image. And it's telling us to do something, and we're looking at it like, well, how do we interact with this static image? What are we supposed to be doing? And it turned out that we're supposed to actually give the app like a voice command in order to progress. But I just had no idea that the app would even be looking for a voice command. Like, I guess I didn't know what the abilities of the app were. So that had us stumped for a while trying to just figure out how to progress from that. So that was one where that just kind of threw me off. And then another one, and again, trying to make this vague so I don't give anything away, but let's say at some point you have like 30 options, okay? And you're selecting these options in the app, and then the app is giving you feedback based on the option you select. So let's say I select option 7, and it's like, hey, you're on the right track. It's like, okay, I don't know what that means, but it's good to know I'm on the right track. And then let's say I hit option 12, and it's like, no, nothing happens. That's a dead end. And then it's like, okay. And then I'm like, all right, well, let me try option 11. And it's like, no, nothing happened there. That's a dead end. All right. And I go around and I try all these different options. And eventually I go back to option 7. And it's like, hey, you're on the right track. And I'm like, all right, I still don't know what that means. What it actually wants you to do and needs you to do to make progress is it needs you to choose option 7 and then option 11 without choosing any other options in between. All right. Again, I'm making this really vague so as to not give it away. But basically, that's what it's looking for. It's like it wants you to choose this option and then this other option immediately afterwards and not choose any other options in between. And so basically, the app is keeping track of the options you're choosing. And when you choose option, let's say option 7, the game state changes within the app behind the scenes, but it doesn't let you know that the game state has actually changed. There's no indication that the game state has changed. And so it was just through a lot of trial and error that we eventually figured out, okay, well, let's go with option 7 and then option 11 from there. And sure enough, that's what it needed. But that was just another little thing where it's like, as a player, I don't know what the app is capable of, and I don't know what the app is doing. So I don't know that when I chose option 7, the game state changed, and now maybe option 11 will work, whereas previously, when I had gone to option 11 first, or maybe when I had done option 7 and then a couple of other options and then went to option 11, it's like none of that had ever worked before. Going to option 11 had never worked before. But if I choose option 7 first and then option 11 immediately afterwards, well, now that works. But just not knowing what the app is doing or what it's keeping track of, that the game state has changed from one moment to the next within the app, just made it really hard to puzzle out that that's what we needed to do. Now, it did make a certain amount of sense thematically from what the scenario was. We should have been able to puzzle that out faster than we did, but there were just a couple of situations like that where the app implementation, while the app is pretty cool and some of the things that you do in the app are pretty neat, there's just little things like that where it's kind of like, I don't know what the app is capable of. I don't know what it's keeping track of. I don't know when in the app the game state has changed. And so that kind of complicated some things. Another couple of things about it, really just one other thing about it that you need to know going into it that kind of made me stumble a couple of times is you have to go into it with an open mind. The tutorial kind of gives you the gist of how the game is going to work, but there are a couple of times in particular where the game really bends or breaks the rules that it has already set up for you. And I feel like this is kind of different than when you go do a escape room in person, because when you go do an escape room in person, you aren't really given a lot of rules going into it. The rules are essentially the rules of reality. In other words, you're physically in a room dealing with physical objects. Whatever they can invent and engineer and make work within, the engine of reality is a possibility. So you have to go into those kinds of situations with an open mind, being open to anything that could possibly work in reality. Here, it's a game that uses cards and an app. So they set up for you certain expectations about like, okay, this is how things work. Like you combine red cards and blue cards add up those numbers, and that possibly lets you get a new card that, flip over another card, right? They set up expectations like that as far as like, this is how the system works. But then there's a couple of points in the game where they bypass that, and you have the solution involves doing something unexpected and unprecedented with the cards or with the app or whatever. And so I think maybe it's just me coming into it from a board gaming perspective. In a board game, I'm used to being able to read the rules and then knowing what to expect from the game and its system throughout. And I'm not going to be playing a board game and all of a sudden somebody like does something unexpected and I'm like, I didn't know the game could work like that. If that happens, they're probably cheating. But here, that's just the expectation. There's at least a couple of times throughout the game where, and I'm going to give them credit because it's pretty interesting and creative the way they do this. But yeah, there's just a couple of times where they break your expectations. They kind of bend the rules that they've already established. And you have to really think outside the box to find the next solution to move forward. So I think that's kind of neat, but it is something that you have to come into the game knowing that. Otherwise, you're going to get held up at a couple of spots trying to figure out what the solution is and not realizing that you have to kind of bend the rules and think outside the box to find that next solution. So overall, what do I think about the game? Well, the truth is I'm really bad at these kinds of games. I like escape rooms and I like games that emulate the escape room experience. But my experience so far with these kinds of things is that I'm just not good at it. When we go do escape rooms in person, I've gone with groups that have done pretty well at those, but I always feel like I'm one of the least contributors to it. I'm contributing the least to solving them. And then playing these games, I have one other game that I played. It's called Escape Room the Game, and it has 3 or 4 scenarios. We've always cut it very close on those scenarios, or maybe gone a little over. And here we definitely went a little over the 1 hour limit on every one of those scenarios. So apparently I'm not very good at these kinds of games. So that kind of colors my experience with it a little bit. I find them a little frustrating because it's just not my forte apparently. But I like the idea of it. So overall, I like the idea of the escape room games. I think that this one does a pretty good job. There's just a couple of things I mentioned that you want to be aware of going into it. But I think overall, this is a pretty cool experience. I think my personal opinion or personal experience or preference with these games is that I'm probably not going to pursue any more of them. I'm probably not going to get another Unlock game or any other escape room type of game. But if somebody else were to bring one to me and say, hey, let's play this, I'd be like, sure, just don't expect me to be much help. But but I'd be happy to play it. But it's not something I would seek out myself. But again, that's mostly just because of my experience. It just seems like something that is not really my forte. But overall, I think it's a pretty cool game. I think the system is pretty neat. Where it meets the app is probably where it has the most, wrinkles, so to speak. But nothing that's really game breaking. And I do like the implementation of the Star Wars theme. I thought that was pretty nice in this. So again, my name is Nathan. You're watching Nice at Dice. Those are my thoughts on Star Wars Unlock. Thank you so much for watching, and you enjoy the rest of your day.